7 years ago, my dad found out that my mom had been cheating on him. The person she was having an affair with wasn't just some random guy either, it was her boss. My dad discovered their affair by accident. One day he came across some text messages on my mom's phone that she had forgotten to delete. The messages were from her boss, and it was undeniable proof of what they had been doing. When he saw them, he immediately confronted my mom. She was caught red-handed, and there was no way for her to talk her way out of it. What followed was an explosive fight between my parents, one that I can still remember vividly. She eventually broke down and admitted to everything. She confessed that her affair had been going on for a long time, on and off. At that point, Mom had already worked in the company for almost 20 years, so it was disgusting to realize that my mother had been sleeping with her boss all along. But the betrayal went even deeper. My dad asked her if she had been having an affair before she got pregnant with me. My mom looked nervous. After a lot of back and forth, she finally confessed that she had gotten pregnant while she was still having the affair. This meant there was a possibility that I was not my dad's biological child. I could see the blood drain from my dad's face. He turned to look at me while I stood there in horror. After my mom confessed, my dad looked at me with a kind of broken intensity, and then, in a voice that trembled with hurt and suspicion, he told me that we needed to have a DNA test done immediately to see if I was even his daughter. At the time, I was 18 years old and had spent all my life thinking that my family was perfect. Overnight, my entire world was turned upside down. Not only had I just discovered that my mom had been cheating on my dad for years, but now there was the terrifying possibility that my dad might not even be my biological father. Well, we did get a DNA test done, and I was absolutely crushed when the results of the test came back. It confirmed my worst fears. My dad was not my biological father. The moment those results came in, it felt like my whole world fell apart. My dad, who had always been my rock and my hero, was absolutely shaken looking at the results. He didn't even talk to me as he silently teared up. During the next few days, I tried so hard to talk to him, but he was just furious at everyone. He didn't even look at me anymore and acted like I didn't exist anymore. If I tried to talk to him, he would scream or completely shut down. No matter the results, I just wanted my dad to comfort me. Things went even more downhill after that. My dad announced that he would be leaving my mom and moving out. He also made it very clear to me that he wanted nothing to do with me anymore. He told me outright that I was no longer allowed to call him Dad. Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. In an instant, it was like he was trying to erase me from his life. I begged him to talk to me, but he just moved out, filed for divorce, and completely cut me off. I tried so hard to reach out to him, but he clearly wanted nothing to do with me anymore. I remember once when he picked up my calls after months of no communication. He yelled at me to stop calling him and told me how disgusted he felt even hearing my voice. Those words haunt me to this day. Meanwhile, my mom was constantly apologizing to me, but her apologies didn't make anything better. I was so angry at her for destroying my family. I blamed her for everything, for making my dad hate me, for keeping the truth from me, and most of all, for breaking up our family. No matter how many times she said she was sorry, it couldn't undo the pain or fix what she had caused. I felt trapped in my house with her. At the time when all of this was happening, I was preparing to leave for college. Thankfully, my parents had been saving for my college fund for years, and even after the divorce, my dad at least didn't take that away from me. He had told my mom during the divorce that it was his last gift to me. and that I shouldn't expect anything else from him in the future. So once I got accepted into a good university, I took the money, packed up my life, and left home. Once I was out, I made the decision to cut off all communication with my mom. She tried reaching out to me several times, apologizing and trying to rebuild our relationship, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive her. Her actions had caused so much damage, and I was too angry and hurt to let her back into my life. As for my dad, things remained the same. He and I haven't spoken since the day he told me he wanted nothing to do with me. Over time, I have come to accept his decision and live with it. In these past 7 years, I've worked incredibly hard to build a life for myself entirely on my own. I've pushed myself to succeed in every way I could, and now I can proudly say I've come a long way. I feel like I have finally reached a point in my life where I no longer feel the need for either of my parents. My mom remains unforgiven, and as for my dad, I don't care anymore. The hurt he caused has faded, replaced by indifference. Anyways, now a month ago, my boyfriend James proposed to me, and I said yes. James has been my rock throughout the years we've been together. He knows about my family history and he loves me despite that. His family has welcomed me with open arms and his parents treat me like their own daughter, something I never thought I'd have again. It feels amazing to be so loved and accepted. Ever since our engagement, we've been busy planning our wedding, and now the big day is just around the corner. I'm genuinely happy with where my life is headed and excited for this new chapter with James. Then, last week, something completely unexpected happened. I got a DM on Facebook from my dad, and when I saw his name pop up, I was stunned. I didn't even know he had a Facebook account, so seeing his message was a total surprise. He doesn't have any current contact information, so he must have tracked me down through Facebook somehow. In the message, my dad wrote that he had heard the news about my upcoming wedding from some of my cousins and relatives. He said he was happy to hear that I was finally getting married and congratulated me. Then he dropped the real bombshell. He said he wanted to reconnect with me and asked for my phone number so we could talk further. It was strange to read those words, considering we've been completely out of each other's lives for years. I felt really conflicted about replying to my dad's message. After all these years of complete silence, why was he reaching out now? He had been the one to cut me off, to tell me he didn't want anything to do with me, and to walk away from my life without looking back. Now, all of a sudden, he wanted to reconnect. What was going on? It felt confusing and a little suspicious, like there had to be some kind of reason behind this sudden change of heart. I wasn't sure if I wanted to let him back into my life, even for a conversation. I talked it over with James, my fiance, because I needed a second opinion. He admitted it seems strange for my dad to reach out now, especially with the timing so close to our wedding. He was cautious too and said he understood why I felt uneasy. At the same time, James pointed out that this could probably be my chance to finally speak my mind and confront the things that have been left unresolved for so long. I never really got to say everything I wanted to all those years ago when my dad left. He reminded me that it was completely my decision. If I felt like I wanted to hear my dad out or get some kind of closure from him, I should consider it. So, after thinking it through for a few days, I finally decided to send my number to my dad and told him to call me if he wanted to talk further. It wasn't an easy decision, but I figured I needed to at least hear him out. Today, when my dad finally called, it was one of the most awkward conversations I've ever had. The moment I heard his voice, all kinds of emotions came rushing back, but I tried to keep them in check. One of the strangest parts was figuring out how to address him. All my life I had called him Dad, but he had asked me not to call him that anymore. He had been the one to strip that title away from himself when he walked out of my life, so what was I supposed to call him now? I ended up calling him by his name, which felt super awkward. First of all, he started by asking how I had been all these years. He also asked a few polite surface level questions about my fiance and our upcoming wedding. It felt so surreal, like he was a stranger trying to make small talk with me. I went along with it for a little while, but I couldn't keep ignoring the elephant in the room. Finally, I just came out and asked him directly, "What do you want from me? Why are you reaching out now after all these years of silence?" The words spilled out faster than I expected. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to let him skirt around them. After everything he'd done, I deserved to know why he was trying to reconnect now. That's when my dad finally opened up and explained himself. He told me how, after discovering my mom's affair, he had been overwhelmed by anger, not just at her, but at the entire situation. He admitted that he was so consumed by his feelings of betrayal that he ended up taking out a lot of that anger on me. He said finding out that I wasn't his biological child had been a huge betrayal. And at the time, it was like everything he thought he knew about our family had been ripped away. He confessed that whenever he saw me back then, it only fueled his rage further, because I was a constant reminder of what my mom had done to him. Hearing him say all of this was tough. It hurt to know that his feelings about the situation had been so tied up in anger towards me, even though I had done nothing wrong to him. I was basically punished for no good reason. But then he told me that after his anger began to fade, he started to miss me. He said he often thought about me and regretted how he had treated me, but by then he felt it was too late for him to reach out. He said he was afraid of how I might react, scared that I would reject him after all the pain he had caused me. However, when he heard about my upcoming wedding, it made him realize just how much he wanted to be part of my life again, and that he regretted everything he had done to push me away. Then, for the first time ever, Dad apologized to me for all the years we'd lost, telling me how sorry he was for his actions. He said he wanted us to have a fresh start. Listening to him, I felt a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, it was validating to hear him acknowledge how his actions had hurt me. But on the other hand, it was hard not to feel frustrated. If he had started missing me years ago, why had he waited until now, until the news of my wedding, to finally reach out? What was the real reason? I had stayed quiet as he spoke, letting him say what he needed to. But when he brought up the idea of a fresh start, I couldn't hold back anymore. I told him flat out that I didn't want anything like that. I said he was getting ahead of himself and that I did not trust him enough to have a fresh start with him. While I appreciated the fact that he had apologized, that didn't mean I had forgiven him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I told him that while I understood that he was angry at my mom for what she had done, and I could even sympathize with how betrayed he must have felt, that didn't excuse what he did to me. I reminded him that I had no fault in any of this. I was just a child caught in the middle of something I couldn't control. Yet he still abandoned me with Mom as if I meant nothing to him. Overnight, I lost him. Not just as my dad, but as someone I could rely on. He left me to deal with the fallout of everything on my own, and I had to live all these years without him in my life. Instead of acknowledging my pain, my dad doubled down. He insisted that my anger was misplaced. He said I should only be angry at my mom, not at him, because he saw himself as a victim of her actions too. He kept emphasizing that everything he did, the way he cut me off and abandoned me, stemmed from the pain she caused him. Then he started urging me to let go of the past and try to forget the years we'd been apart. He said all he wanted now was for us to move forward as if none of it had happened. Then he confessed that what he truly wanted from me was the chance to walk me down the aisle at my wedding. Hearing that left me completely stunned. I couldn't believe what he was saying. Just yesterday, I didn't even know he still acknowledged me as his child, and now, out of the blue, he wanted to step into one of the most significant moments of my life as if those lost years didn't matter. I pointed this out to him, telling him how absurd it was that he was making such a request when this was our first conversation literally after years. I reminded him that he had shown no interest in being my dad or even checked up on me, but now he wanted to walk me down the aisle in front of everyone and act like my father. His request felt so sudden and out of place, and I couldn't understand how he thought it would make sense after everything he'd done or failed to do over the years. So I refused my dad outright, telling him there was absolutely no way I would want him to walk me down the aisle. In fact, I had already asked my maternal grandfather to do this. My grandfather had been thrilled by the honor, and we share a close bond. However, my dad seemed pissed to hear this. He started to accuse me of breaking his heart by not allowing him to do this for me. He said I was being selfish for not letting him walk me down the aisle and that I was exactly like Mom. He insisted that I had no right to ask my grandfather to walk me down the aisle and that I should have at least tried to reach out to him first. My dad then started to demand that I cancel with my grandfather and that I should give him a chance to fix things, as if everything could just be erased in an instant because he had reached out. I was taken aback by his audacity. Luckily, I'm not a scared child any longer. I refused and stood firm, telling him I wasn't going to change my mind. My grandfather was someone who had always been there for me, who had supported me when I felt abandoned by my dad, and I wasn't going to turn my back on that for someone who had walked away from me for so many years. My dad kept trying to guilt trip me, insisting I needed to prioritize his feelings over everything else. But I still didn't give in. Ever since then, my dad has been texting me incessantly, and I can't help but wonder, Reddit? AITA? To clarify a few things that people keep asking in the comments. Even after my dad stopped all communication with me, not all of his side of the family took his side. Some of my cousins from his side have kept in touch with me over the years, and that's how I'm guessing my dad has managed to keep track of my life from them. It's strange that my dad kept tabs through them, but never once reached out to me until now. As for my dad's parents, they passed away years before my parents ever got divorced, which meant they weren't around to witness everything that happened with the affair and the fallout afterward. I sometimes wonder how they would have reacted considering how close I was to them growing up. But with both of them gone, there is no chance for me to ask them or to find out if they would have sided with me or my dad. On the other hand, my mom's side of the family completely turned on her after dad revealed her affair to everyone during their divorce. Currently, they all still dislike her because of what she did, but thankfully, they have never turned their back on me. My maternal grandparents, in particular, have been a constant presence in my life. They've continued to be there for me, offering support and love, especially when everything with my dad went down. Even when I went away to college and cut off my mom, they understood exactly why I don't want to be in contact with her. And they respect my decision to continue to keep my distance from her. When I asked my maternal grandfather to walk me down the aisle, he was incredibly happy, and that meant so much to me. He's been such an important figure in my life, and I can't imagine anyone else taking his place. He was so happy and proud to be asked, and I can't take that away from him no matter how much my dad begs me. Also, to be perfectly honest, I have no desire for my dad to walk me down the aisle. After everything that's happened, I'm still unsure about what kind of relationship, if any, I even want with him moving forward. There's so much unresolved pain, anger, and confusion. So I'm not sure I can just jump back into a relationship with him because he suddenly wants to be part of my life again. I'm still processing everything, and I'm not ready to give him that place of honor at my wedding, especially when I don't know where we stand. Unlike my dad, my mom has respected my wishes and hasn't contacted me, which is exactly what I want. I don't think I could handle it if she started reaching out too. After thinking it through and reflecting on all the advice I received from Reddit, I have come to realize that I am really happy without my dad in my life. I no longer have a place for him, so I don't appreciate his sudden interest in trying to reconnect. It feels like an attempt to re enter my life on his terms, and I'm not willing to allow that anymore. Since he clearly isn't ready to listen to me in a conversation, I have come to realize that the only way I can truly express my feelings to my dad is by writing it out. He clearly isn't ready to listen to me in a conversation, so I needed to take the time to organize my thoughts and put everything down in writing. Just because he seemed to have moved on and wanted to sweep everything under the rug didn't mean I had. I wasn't ready to just forgive him and pretend that all the years of hurt had disappeared. James, my fiance, has been incredibly supportive throughout this process. He encouraged me to finally say my piece, to get everything off my chest and then cut off any further contact with my dad, which is exactly what I did. I didn't want to keep carrying around all the unresolved emotions. And I knew that telling my dad exactly how I felt would be the only way to gain some closure, whether or not he understood or accepted it. So here is what I sent to my dad on Facebook. I want to start by saying that I completely get that you were angry at mom for what she did to you, but I was just a child caught in between the both of you. Yet you decided to walk away from me. You abandoned me, and I had to grow up without you in my life. You have no idea the number of nights I have cried for you, wishing you would come back, wondering if you even thought about me. I didn't deserve all that. You said you missed me after your anger had faded, but the truth is, you left me alone with my pain for all these years. You didn't even try to reach out. Your actions speak louder than any words can. You left a hole in my life that I had to learn to fill on my own. And now, when everything is finally starting to feel somewhat stable in my life, you reach out because I'm getting married? Why didn't you reach out to me sooner when I needed you the most? When I was trying to pick up the pieces of my life, you were nowhere to be found. You said you want to make things right and start fresh, but that's not something I can just jump into. I have spent so much of my life without you, and I'm not sure if I want a relationship with you at all anymore. Just because you've decided to show up now doesn't mean I'm ready to forgive everything and move on. As for walking me down the aisle, I'm not comfortable with that. I've already asked my grandfather, and he's thrilled to be there for me. Asking him to step aside now to accommodate you doesn't feel right, and I can't do that to him. He's the one who has been there for me through it all, and he deserves to be the one giving me away. Please know that I'm not angry at you anymore. I'm just hurt, and I need time to figure out if there's even a place for you in my life moving forward. I'm not ready to have you back in my life just yet, and I don't know if I ever will be. So this is goodbye for now. I'm cutting off contact with you for good, so please don't try to reach out again. I hope you find your peace just like I have. After sending this, I blocked my dad so he can not contact me further. This has been very hard, but it's my way of taking control and moving forward with my life on my own terms. Today was my wedding rehearsal, and everything was running smoothly until I was completely blindsided by an unexpected arrival. My dad showed up, accompanied by one of my cousins who I had actually invited. I was so taken aback I could barely process it. I hadn't seen my dad in so long that it took me a moment to even recognize him. He looked so much older now than I remember. After all the years of silence, the last thing I expected was for my dad to show up in person. My cousin told me that my dad had apparently begged her for days to let him come with her, and she had no choice in the end but to bring him along with her. James naturally was furious when he saw them and was ready to throw both my dad and cousin out. But my dad pleaded with me to talk to him. Despite everything, I decided to take my dad aside for a private conversation. I needed to know what was going on in his head and why he was here, especially after everything I had written to him. As soon as we were alone, my dad told me how my email had only made him feel more guilty and that he was willing to do anything to earn my forgiveness, that he would go to any lengths to prove he was a changed man now. He reiterated that he really wanted to be in my life moving forward and wanted my husband's future kids to know him. I snapped and told him that he had no right to show up now, after everything, and expect me to just let him back into my life. He didn't get to waltz in and act like everything could just be fixed in an instant. I said that him showing up here without my consent and begging for forgiveness now was manipulative, not genuine, and that he had no right to ask for anything from me, especially not the privilege of being part of one of the most important moments of my life. I reminded him of the years he spent ignoring me, making me feel like I was nothing to him, and how I had been forced to live without a father because of his selfish actions. I told him that his apology now didn't erase the years of pain, the abandonment, or the way he shattered our family. Then, with that familiar sense of entitlement, my dad then asked me if I would at least reconsider inviting him to my wedding. He claimed that even if he could not walk me down the aisle, he would still be happy to attend as a guest. He kept repeating how much he had suffered without me, and how he wanted to be there for me like the father he had never been. I told him that it was too late now. No matter how hard he tried to manipulate the situation, it wasn't going to work. I told him he had already lost me years ago and there was no coming back from that. I asked him to leave quietly and not cause a scene, as it was already embarrassing enough that he had crashed my event. After I finished laying into my dad, I went and confronted my cousin. She knew how much pain my dad had caused me, and yet she had betrayed me by allowing him to come. The fact that she went behind my back and let him into my life again, without even giving me a heads up, was unforgivable. I felt completely betrayed by her, and I told her, in no uncertain terms, that she was uninvited from my wedding. I have had enough of people disrespecting me and pushing me to forgive someone when I am not ready. This is my wedding, my moment, and I am not going to let anyone ruin it. Hey guys, it's been a while since I updated, but I have been really busy. James and I did get married, and the day was everything I had hoped for. Our wedding went smoothly, and I was surrounded by the people who truly love and support me. It was a day of joy and celebration, and the beginning of a new chapter in our lives. After seeing my dad on my wedding rehearsal day, I haven't seen or heard from him again, and honestly, that's exactly what I want. He hasn't reached out since, and it feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I'm glad I told him whatever I had to say. There are no more unanswered questions, no more guilt, no more wondering if he would try to re-enter my life. Now I'm just focused on living the rest of my life happily with James. Wish me luck, guys. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.